Hey, welcome back to the About the Labor podcast here at VikingsTerritory.com. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we're talking Minnesota Vikings, Atlanta Falcons, starting off with Xavier versus Julio. We'll do a full breakdown on that. We'll go over some target stuff, some reception stuff, and basically, who has the upper hand in this matchup. That's going to be the focus of today's episode. After that, we'll do our normal breakdown, offense and defense, pretty standard stuff. If you guys have been listening for the last couple of weeks, or I guess the last couple of months, you know what we do on Fridays, so we'll do that once again. We're going to have a special segment today. I'm going to tell you a story about my life, and I think you guys are going to enjoy that. And then we're going to finish up with an extended sign-out and some Twitter takes today. So that's the plan. Let's get started here. We got a bit of a longer ad today, so bear with us here. This is coming in hot from Black Stack Brewing. With a Vikings victory on the horizon, it's important to talk about victory, success, winning, and beer. That's right. It's time for another beer pong tournament over at Black Stack Brewing. The Jingle Cup is finally here. Come pong next Saturday, December 9th, for a chance to win free beer for a year. That's right, folks. Free beer for a year and free delivery from Running Tap. The tourney starts at noon, but if you want to limber up, come in at 11 o'clock for yoga with Ohm Brewers. Guys, they do a fantastic job. It's a great combination between yoga and beer. Can't go wrong. On top of yoga, we also have El Burrito Mercado will be there with delicious tacos. There's always great beer at Black Stack, but you guys already knew that because you've already been there before, right? But you knew that already, and you can't go wrong. See you at the Jingle Cup next Saturday. Tickets are available at beerpong.twincities.directory. That's www.beerpong.twincities.directory. I will be there. You should be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you're at Black Stack Brewing at noon on December 9th, folks. All right, let's talk Vikings football. Like I said, starting with Xavier Rhodes versus Julio Jones. That is the matchup of the weekend. I don't think anyone's going to argue with me on that one. Should be an absolutely phenomenal showdown. I am jacked for this matchup. These two have faced each other twice in the past. Rhodes has gotten the better of Julio in my personal opinion. So let's break this down a little bit to start here. First of all, Drew, tell me a little bit about Julio Jones. Obviously, he's a great receiver in the NFL. We all know that. But what exactly, beyond the height, beyond the athleticism, like there are other guys of his size and his athleticism, but what makes Julio Jones the special player that he is?
Well, I think he combines everything that you want out of a wide receiver. Like all of these different facets of playing the position you can have, he has them all essentially into one player. I mean, right. He's just a shorter Calvin Johnson. You know what I'm saying? Like, because Calvin, I think, was 6'5". I think Julio's is 6'3" or something like that. But, I mean, he's essentially a shorter Calvin Johnson. He can go up and make the acrobatic catch. He's a phenomenal route runner. I think that goes a little bit, under the radar just because of everything else he does super well. And, I mean, he takes on he can go out of the slot. Excuse me. He'll play out of the slot. He'll play outside. He's a very precise route runner, too, just like Adam Thielen. But he also makes those fantastic catches, in between 2-3 defenders. I mean, that one in the Super Bowl last year, it was kind of as New England was coming back, and there was that throw on the sideline from Matt Ryan. It goes completely. I mean, people forget it because the Patriots won that game, but that catch was just unreal, and it should have sealed the game for the Falcons. But it obviously nobody remembers that anymore. He does so many things that I personally like him almost more than Antonio Brown.
That was my next question. My next question, because there's a lot of people that will tell you that Julio Jones is the better of the two receivers. I personally lean Antonio Brown. I think you guys know why. I think I've said it enough. I just believe in the route running a little bit more. But Julio Jones is a 1B to Antonio Brown at the very least. And I think most people will tell you that, I shouldn't say most people. I think a lot of people will tell you that he is number one. I know Jordan Reed, for example, bigger fan of Julio Jones than he is of Antonio Brown. So, next thing here, what makes Xavier Rhodes so good? I mean, we've seen what Xavier can do, obviously, over the course of, the last season and a half or so. He has been pretty definitively the best cornerback in the NFL, in my personal opinion. He does a lot of things well that makes him special, and we've seen his development, grow. He's grown a ton as a player since the moment he was drafted. Mike Zimmer has done wonders with this guy. So, at this point in his career, what is it about Xavier Rhodes that makes him the best cornerback in the league? Arguably, I suppose.
So I think the difference for Xavier Rhodes that makes him so much better is that, in press coverage, I think he's as locked down as it gets in press coverage
For sure.
because, see, I compare press coverage at cornerback to playing, one-on-one man defense in basketball.
Yeah.
Because the way I was told to play basketball, one-on-one, play defense is you don't look at their head or their eyes or anything. You're looking at their gut because that's how the savvy players will beat you with head fakes and stutter steps and all those things. But
Adam
if you're
Thielen.
looking, you can't. You're right. A player can't go anywhere without their stomach, and they can't tell you anything with their stomach. So you're looking at their gut, and that's what Xavier Rhodes does. If you watch him in press coverage, Marvin Jones. I mean, the stats actually from last week. If you look at them in press coverage, Rhodes locked down Marvin Jones, or at least he was. I don't think Marvin Jones had much success. I think just a couple catches last week against press coverage, whereas the rest of the success, the touchdowns, everything came in off coverage. So Rhodes will not fall for those fakes that Julio likes to use at the line of scrimmage to get off. And I think he mirrors really well as well. And that's kind of goes with, simply not falling for those head fakes, those stutter steps, the quick twitch moves at the line of scrimmage that a lot of receivers use to get off the line. So that's why I think Xavier Rhodes is so good, is because he's so disciplined and he doesn't fall for those fakes. He mans up by mirroring the stomach of the opposing receiver and not the head or the eyes or the feet.
Did you know that I was going to answer that I was going to ask you that question or something? Because it seems like
I did not.
That wasn't bad. That wasn't bad out of you. For me, Xavier Rhodes, what makes him so special, aside from the fact that he is a physically dominating specimen from a cornerback perspective, especially, like Drew said, phenomenal in press coverage. And what makes you so good at press coverage, in my personal opinion, in addition to what Drew said, is just being a warrior out there. You have to be a bit of an asshole, pardon my French, because you're literally fighting this guy off the line of scrimmage. Literally. You have 5 yards basically to knock this guy off his route. And that's what Xavier Rhodes has been phenomenal at doing. That's why he's so great at press coverage. And that's why I credit Mike Zimmer so much, because that's something that he brought over hardcore to Minnesota. Admittedly, I didn't start watching football from an all-22 perspective until 2014. But from what I remember, press coverage it was a piece of the Vikings defense, especially with guys like Antoine Winfield out there. But right now, they run press coverage more than I've ever seen it in my entire life. And the Vikings do that exceedingly well. That includes Trey Waynes, too, for what it's worth. Now, what else is special about Xavier Rhodes, and this came on lately, is his ball skills. We saw this last year, and we saw this year. Before that, remember, we thought that Rhodes was a good cornerback before the last 2 years, but what did we always say? And we said, for what it's worth, we said this on episode 15 of the show. What made him kind of change in the mind of the public is he started picking off passes, in my opinion. That's what a lot of people look for. I'm not trying to be demeaning in any way here, but there are a ton of people who look at interception totals and they say, okay, that's the best cornerback in the league. That's how he has become a more marketable player from an advertising perspective, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
He's always been very, very talented, obviously, but that has been kind of the difference between what makes him a good cornerback that's going to lock you down versus a dangerous quarterback that Mitchell Trubisky wouldn't even look at. If you watch that Bears film, he does not even look in Rhodes' direction. And I don't blame him, Dowell Loggins had his smart game plan involved there. He didn't want to have his rookie
It almost worked.
It
almost worked.
It did. He didn't want to have his rookie take a gamble that could decimate his confidence. I mean, imagine if you target Rhodes in the first game and it's a pick six. That's one of the only smart things Dowell Loggins has ever done, in my personal opinion. So
True.
Rhodes is a beast. Julio Jones is a beast. Now we get to the prediction part of the show here. How many receptions for Julio Jones this time? And we'll go over the reception totals right after this. How many receptions? We won't do targets, so I think that's probably too difficult to predict. How many receptions and how many yards does Julio Jones get against Xavier Rhodes this week?
Yeah, we can go. I'll just go over those numbers right now, because you went together, watched the film, put the coverage numbers together, and this is your work. Let's make sure that that's clear. I don't want to be taking your stuff here.
Are you saying something subliminally right now? Possibly.
I'm hinting that there is a controversy going on that does not involve us, but it involves your work that someone else may have taken and used.
No,
anyway.
There's no way that's possible. No way. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, what you have on your chart in the first game, these two matched up. 2014 would have been Teddy's first career start, actually. The Vikings won, I believe, 41-28 or something like that. For the game total, Julio had 6 catches for 82 yards on 8 targets. But on 4 targets against Rhodes, Julio had 2 catches for 27 yards. And then in the 2015 matchup in Atlanta, Julio finished with 5 catches, 56 yards on 7 targets. 3 of those targets were against Rhodes, 2 catches for 18 yards. So, there hasn't been the, universal shadow across the entire field matchup yet between these two. Right. But for the most part, Rhodes has gotten the better of Julio when they have matched up. So I like that the Vikings have a guy that you can match up against a Julio Jones and go across the whole field for the whole game. Now, will they do that the whole game? Because that could be very tiring for Xavier Rhodes to have to take on that task. So I don't anticipate them to do that completely, but
it's a really good take.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna have to chop that one up and put it on Twitter. That was a good take.
That's an unfair expectation for any cornerback to take, but I would assume for the majority of the game you'll see Rhodes versus Julio in press coverage, because what the Vikings have done a lot of times is they have their cover 3 zone with linebackers inside, and they shade, what the cornerbacks do, and like in the slot and outside with Waynes, they shade the receivers inside towards the linebacker help from Barr and Kendricks, but then they leave Rhodes on an island with another receiver if it's a competing matchup, if it's something like the Bears when they didn't have a receiver that he was even varsity worthy, they didn't have Rhodes shadow, but with Julio Jones, with Antonio Brown, they shadowed. So I think that you'll see that a lot of that out of the Vikings. They're cover 3 or cover 1 look with the single high safety, and then they'll have their corners, Alexander or Newman, whoever's in the slot, and then Wayne's kind of shadow guys to the inside, and then they'll have that linebacker help in the middle, and they'll have Rhodes on an island with Julio.
Yeah, that typically is the defense that Mike Zimmer is going to trot out there, and that's.
I guess I didn't give a prediction, so maybe I should do that. I went off on a tangent, but I'll go 6 targets. I'll go with 4 receptions for 38 yards.
Okay, so you have Xavier Rhodes winning this battle. I think that.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me with the coverage chart here, so this is what I took away from watching him on film. First and foremost, I think this is the most important thing here, is that we're evaluating 2 matchups that happened 2 and 3 years ago. I think both of these players are completely different since then, so I don't know how valuable this information is, to be honest with you. I just think it's kind of cool to look back and see what it would look like. But what I did see, and a couple of things that I noticed here from Rhodes especially, was you could tell that he didn't have the experience that he does now. For example, there was one play, and I believe I tweeted this one out, where Julio was going downtown. That was what was happening, and he got Rhodes in a full spin cycle. Like, literally, like he was looking at Julio, and Julio head faked him, got him to spin all the way, like literally all the way around, full rotation. I have not seen that from Xavier Rhodes probably since his rookie year. That's not a mistake he's ever going to, like, yeah. I don't want to say that's not a mistake he's never going to make again, but pretty close.
Actually, you know what? I actually remember an instance. Remember that touchdown Golden Tate scored last year to win the game against the Vikings at the U.S. Bank Stadium. Well, I don't know if Rhodes for sure didn't press on that play, and he might have been in zone coverage, but regardless, Tate did spin Rhodes around, I'm pretty sure, on that play. But that's like the only example I can think of.
But regardless, the point being here now is that we just mentioned 2 plays here, and both of them were not optimal results. Now, I should mention that since I haven't completed explaining this play here, Rhodes does make the pass breakup here at the last second. Phenomenal play. Just simply not a habit you want to get into, obviously. If you're a cornerback, do you remember, I believe you tweeted this one out, actually, when Stephon Diggs broke onto the scene when he spun Chris Harris around and everyone went crazy?
Yeah, that was Aqib Talib. Aqib Talib on the outside.
Right, Aqib Talib.
Like, Talib literally went out of the frame. I remember that. That's why I took the video of it and replayed it, is because then the Fox replay angle, when they show kind of like the, behind the play,
right.
Talib, Diggs ran the out route. Talib went out of the picture, spun probably 7 yards away from Diggs, and it was the easiest out route of Teddy Bridgewater's career.
Right, and now what was our reaction to that? Oh, he just torched Aqib Talib. Now, I think if nothing else, that reaction alone should tell you how stupid and how bad it is to flip your hips all the way around as a cornerback. And the point that I'm ramping up to here is you're not going to see that stupid stuff from Rhodes at this point in his career. He simply doesn't make that type of mistake anymore. Like Drew said, he doesn't fall for the head fakes as much anymore. It's very, very rare that I've seen him fall for the head fake or the shoulder or the stutter step or whatever it is. Everything that Adam Thielen does, basically. I haven't seen that happen from Rhodes in a long time, for the most part. The final thing here that I think is important within this matchup, we've gone over press coverage, we've gone over the ball skills. I think that the fact of the matter here, and you mentioned this to a degree already, is that Rhodes is capable of going one-on-one all the way downfield with Julio Jones. He doesn't necessarily need safety help. I think you can expect for him to get safety help a lot of the time, especially based off the pattern matching scheme that Mike Zimmer likes to run. If he's crossing over the middle, chances are Rhodes is going to let him go and pick up a different receiver, and you might see Harrison Smith get a target or something like that. But for the most part, what makes this matchup so fantastic, and I think, I really do think that Drew's point earlier that Rhodes probably won't shadow him 100% of the time because of just simple stamina is very important here. But the fact that you can go straight up toe-to-toe one-on-one with Julio Jones and force Taylor Gabriel and Mohamed Sanu essentially to be the big play guys in this game, that for me is going to be the difference here. Now, to get to my prediction, I think that you did targets, so I'll try and come up with something. But I think that Rhodes is going to be targeted a lot still. Matt Ryan is a fairly fearless quarterback when it comes to targeting Julio Jones. He trusts him, and why wouldn't he? So I'm going to say 8 targets for Rhodes. And I'm going to say that his percentage on the season, I believe, is 51% completion. So I'll go with 5 catches, and I'll say 57 yards. And I think that's a good line for most wide receivers. For Julio Jones, that's probably considered a poor day, right? I kind of evaluate this matchup sort of like we did back in Tampa Bay with Mike Evans. Julio's going to get his to some degree.
Yeah.
The cornerback position, I've said this a million times, it's inherent to failure. He's going to catch a couple balls. I'd assume that a lot of them will come in off coverage, like Drew just said, because, in a quick in-breaking route against 12 yards deep and off coverage, advantage receiver every single time. So I expect to see stuff like that. But when they're on, when they get into like a 2-minute situation and it's, a situation where they need to stop the Atlanta Falcons offense, you can bet your ass that Xavier Rhodes will be lined up toe-to-toe with Julio Jones, bumping his ass off the line until the route's over. This will be a fist fight from start to finish because both of these guys are physical, they're both competitive, and they're both superior athletes. So this is going to be fantastic across the board. I encourage you Vikings fans to appreciate Julio Jones' greatness in this game, despite the fact that we obviously don't want to see him do his thing. But just watch Julio Jones do his thing. Watch him get open this weekend because there are going to be times where he gets open. And just watch the way he does it because, honestly, it's beautiful. The way that he is able to get open consistently as a receiver, make tough catches in traffic, and basically do his thing week in and week out, it's special. We might not see a receiver quite like him ever again. I understand that he's got traits like Moss. I understand he's got traits like Calvin Johnson. But Julio Jones is his own guy. He's a tremendous football player. He's one of the few receivers, in my opinion, who isn't a diva and basically lets what's on the field, do the talking for him, which says a lot about his character, in my opinion. This is the best matchup that I think that we might see in a long time for Xavier Rhodes, with these both guys in the primes of their career, entering a situation in a not necessarily a must-win situation for the Vikings, but you obviously really want to have this win. And for Atlanta, this is borderline a must-win for them if they're thinking first-round bye or something like that. This is a big game for both guys. I expect a tremendous matchup. Again, just appreciate it. Just try to appreciate it because I don't know if you're going to see a better cornerback wide receiver matchup in terms of being, two dominant players going head to head at the peaks of their career. That's what you're getting this Sunday. Enjoy it, folks. So, you got something to add here?
No, I was just going to say, I think, what did you say for Julio's numbers? 5 for 50 something?
57.
For receptions and yards? Okay. I think for reference, Antonio Brown, I believe, had 3 catches for 28 yards on 7 targets or against Rhodes, something like that in the Pittsburgh game. Because I remember in that game, Brown was relatively quiet, and as was Le'Veon Bell. Steelers were gifted a bunch of points in that game due to penalties by the Vikings. But point being, the Vikings can, and Rhodes and the Vikings defense can and will lock down opposing teams' number one guys. I saw, in Detroit, there was a stronger emphasis on Golden Tate in the slot. I think the Vikings typically are pretty successful at stopping number one threats. Julio's clearly the number one threat here. So, it's not that Julio can't or doesn't have the ability to win, and Matt Ryan doesn't have the ability to find him. We obviously know those guys are elite players at their positions. Absolutely. But this Vikings defense is also elite. Xavier Rhodes is also elite. This is going to be a very fun one, I think.
Right, and right once again. So just to confirm, Drew absolutely nailed those numbers for Antonio Brown. It's 8 targets, 3 receptions, 28 allowed, a 47.92 passer rating. So that's the bar that Xavier Rhodes has set when matching up against elite wide receivers. So
not bad.
With that said, let's move on to the rest of the offense here for the Falcons. Since we just, we're already talking offense, let's keep going with it here. We got to start with Matt Ryan here. I've already mentioned him a couple times. I've mentioned a couple of his traits already. Very tough player, very smart player, Boston College alum. This guy's smart as hell. He does his thing week in and week out and basically goes kind of unnoticed for how great he actually is. This is a former MVP we're dealing with here. I don't care if you don't think Matt Ryan is good. That's your opinion. That's fair. He's a former MVP. You do not want to mess with this guy, period. You don't want to give him open looks because he's going to find them. He reads the field extremely well. For you, Drew, what is the trait about Matt Ryan that scares you the most, or the tendency, I guess, that scares you the most?
I think he's very, very accurate throwing deep. And for what it's worth, the Vikings have been good at keeping plays in front of them for most of the season. I'm trying to remember a play outside of the couple of Wayne's plays at the beginning of the year where a receiver got past the Vikings DBs for a long gain. But I think that's where this team can beat you and really kind of torch you and kind of make that big play to either give you the dagger or kind of come back in the game, whatever it is. They seem to make that big play through the air, and they can do that with all of their receivers. Mohamed Sanu can go deep down the field. Taylor Gabriel can go deep down the field. Obviously, Julio can go down the field. And even their tight ends can go down the field, too. I mean, you look at Austin Hooper, too. He's made a couple big plays on the field as well. So this Atlanta team has weapons, and they can stretch the field vertically as well as beat you with underneath stuff. Obviously, Taylor Gabriel made a living last year at those quick tunnel screens to the outside, and from there I think he exploded for multiple touchdowns on those plays. So these receivers are obviously very talented weapons, very useful for Matt Ryan, and he takes advantage of them for sure.
Absolutely. I was actually, I'm kind of pissed that you brought up Taylor Gabriel before me because this is one of those guys for me where I kind of irrationally like him. For example, back when I was kind of growing up as a Vikings fan, I was obsessed with Andre Allison. I know it's weird. I just really liked Andre Allison. So
yeah, that's
kind of how Taylor Gabriel is for me here. But let me explain to you why Taylor Gabriel is a guy that, after this game is a guy that you should be rooting for. First and foremost, undrafted guy, came into the league with basically undersized frame, and nobody gave him a shot. He's a very small receiver relative to his position. But what has made him so great, and keep in mind, the Cleveland Browns cut this guy. The Cleveland Browns, the same team that can't do anything through the air.
Wait, Cleveland cut a player that ended up, being a very good player? Wow, that's right. Shocking.
So this guy got cut by Cleveland. Does it get lower than that? I don't know. And he goes to Atlanta, mixes up with Kyle Shanahan the first year, and I swear to God, you saw a completely different player. It was unbelievable. And now the thing about Taylor Gabriel is that he's not going to show up in the box score, so a lot of people are going to look at the numbers for Gabriel and say, why is BJ spending so much time on this guy? That's fine. But the purpose of the show is to go beyond the box score. That's our motto here. And beyond the box score, this dude is a phenomenal route runner, a very, very hard worker. A guy that made something out of nothing, a la Adam Thielen, if you want to compare him to that. He's not nearly as great as Adam Thielen, but he has gone through a similar process to becoming a quality player in an important offense. So Taylor Gabriel, for me, is the unsung hero in this offense. He's, like Drew said, he's going to catch a lot of underneath passes. He's going to run tremendous routes. This is probably going to be Mackenzie Alexander's guy for the most part, who for what it's worth here, Mackenzie Alexander is actually allowing the lowest opposing passing rating on the Vikings team this year. So this is another very solid matchup, but I think that, if you're not watching Julio, keep an eye on Taylor Gabriel simply because, like I said before, he runs routes, and guys who run really good routes they have longevity in this league because it's a skill.
Sure.
It's a skill that basically you can do it until you're dead. I mean, you never forget how to run routes because to some degree it's a creativity thing. Again, we talked about Adam Thielen so much with the head fakes, the foot movement, all that kind of stuff. It's a creativity thing, watching film ahead of time, knowing what you're up against, knowing where they tend to lean given the circumstance, that type of stuff. Taylor Gabriel does all of this stuff well, so don't be surprised if you see him make a big first down catch. It might only be one catch for Taylor Gabriel, but I guarantee you it's going to be a big one, and that's the kind of player he is, so keep an eye out for the little man in that offense here. The other guy is Mohamed Sanu. And Mohamed Sanu is an interesting player to me. He's kind of like Marvin Jones, so I kind of hesitate to say this given what happened the last time I had a take on a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, by the way. Really sorry about that. Mohamed Sanu is not a good receiver in my personal opinion. Okay? He's a solid receiver, but in my opinion, he's a product of the system. We saw what he did in Cincinnati. Solid player, but when you're playing opposite A.J. Green, buddy, or Julio Jones, you should be getting 1,000 yards. You're going against a number 2 corner every single week, every single week, and like Drew said before, probably like 94% of the time, you're going to see Xavier Rhodes on Julio. So he's going to get Trey Waynes on the outside for most of this game. The reason they brought him in is basically to relieve pressure from Julio. That's why he's in Atlanta in the first place. And in my opinion, he hasn't done that. They're still forcing the ball to Julio quite a bit. I mean, did you guys watch last week's game, perhaps? They forced the ball to Julio, and anytime you see a quarterback forcing it to a receiver, chances are if you go back and rewatch it again, it's because the other guys aren't getting open or they weren't getting open earlier in the game, and they kind of just – it's like a quarterback when they know the protection.
You didn't build a rhythm with them.
Right. It's like when a quarterback doesn't know the protection is breaking down consistently, they get the ball out of their hands faster just naturally. It's a similar thing, in my opinion, with quarterbacks throwing the football downfield. If the guys aren't getting open, they're going to start looking exclusively towards the guy who's getting open, and obviously that's going to be Julio Jones. So Mohamed Sanu, in my opinion, average receiver at best, not worth the money, a guy that to a degree, complements the offense well simply because he does have natural talent. I'm not going to take that away from him, but I just don't think he's ever been productive enough relative to the standing that he's in. He's played with A.J. Green and Julio Jones, and this guy basically has never broken out. I believe he's never had more than 800 yards in his career. That, to me, is not a good number 2 receiver given their situation. I mean, look at Stephon Diggs playing opposite Adam Thielen right now, with Case Keenum as his quarterback, not a former MVP, and the damage that he's doing with the same body type, the same type of skill set, just a superior skill set. Okay, I think that's all said there. Sanu, again, if he burns me here, fine. That's kind of what former Cincinnati receivers are doing.
And you'll
this
stop
year.
Talking about wide receivers forever.
I'll probably stop talking about wide receivers, but in my personal opinion, Mohamed Sanu is not as much of a threat as everyone says he is. That's just my take. And so let's finish up here with kind of a combination between Austin Hooper and this offensive line here. I just want for the offensive line, I think a lot of you guys probably already know this is fairly common knowledge at this point. There are 2 very, very, very talented players in this offensive line that warrant notice. That's Jake Matthews, the left tackle, a former first-round pick, and then center Alex Mack, who, in my opinion, is a foundational piece on any franchise based on the fact that he was in Cleveland, and he didn't want to leave Cleveland. They forced him out. He wanted to be there because he wanted to be part of the team that, finally turned it around.
Yeah.
That is Alex Mack's personality, and he's a nasty, nasty mauler in the interior. So if there is a guy that can get off with Linval Joseph, in my opinion, it's Alex Mack because he's a phenomenal cerebral center. So keep an eye on the interior. And then again, Jake Matthews versus Everson Griffin should also be a good one. I guess what are your thoughts on this awesome offensive line as a whole here, particularly those 2 guys that I just mentioned?
Yeah, obviously those 2 guys are phenomenal, and I'm really looking forward to the Griffin-Matthews matchup in particular here. But I wanted to touch on play action, because Atlanta, at least with Kyle Shanahan, you've seen it this year too with Sarkisian, that they run very efficient play action concepts, and I mean we see it all season long in Minnesota with Case Keenum, but they like to do max protect play action concepts where there's essentially two receivers, and they have, the classic concept is a deep post followed by an undercross.
You guys are listening right now, by the way, right? Because Drew's dropping knowledge on you right now.
Oh yeah,
keep going.
The classic concept, though, that you see most often, at least when I watch Atlanta, the deep post followed by the cross underneath, and they set that up with Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. And by the way, Freeman, it appears to be back this week after the concussion. So I think stopping the run is going to be important, but also the linebackers not biting up on these play action fakes. And again, this all starts with the offensive line.
Of course.
If the offensive line has their way with Minnesota on the ground, you'll see Barr and Kendricks, and I guess if Gideon's in, you'll see them bite up a little bit on those play action fakes, and then that'll open up the stuff down the field. So I look, the winning in the trenches is going to be huge, and that will set the tone, because that'll stop the run, which will stop those play action concepts from beating the Vikings on defense.
The play action fake has quickly become one of the most powerful tools that offensive coordinators have at their disposal in this NFL, because despite what some people think, you still need to run the ball effectively to be a dominant team. I think you can get away with being a good team and run past the ball at a 70-30 rate, but you can't be a great team without a good running game. And this is kind of what makes Atlanta so complete, in my opinion, is because you have all of these solid receivers. You got an elite receiver in Jones. You got a solid player in Mohamed Sanu. I know I just took a lot away from him, but he's a solid player, I think it's fair to say. Taylor Gabriel's phenomenal. Justin Hardy tends to come up with some, he comes up with a catch every now and then. I liked him coming out. There's a lot of talent in terms of skill at the pass catchers. Austin Hooper, the tight end, doesn't blow me away. I think he is kind of he's a default player in this offense. I think that Steve Sarkisian would rather have a more athletic tight end, or at least, someone that can work the ball downfield at, let's call it a quicker rate. I just don't think that he's that dynamic of a tight end, but he gets the job done for the most part, and part of that is because he sees so many one-on-ones with the receivers across the board, and the fact that they run so many three wide receiver sets across the game during the game, which forces basically man coverage across the board on corners, safety help over the top, and that's going to force a linebacker on the tight end. So he's had some success in that way, but overall, to get down to the nitty-gritty here, this offense feeds off of Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman, and just using those two guys to manipulate the defense, because Julio Jones is running routes on every single play. Those three guys combined, I think that you could throw a lot of quarterbacks in there and he'd be able to find success. I'm not taking anything away from Matt Ryan. He's phenomenal. I'm simply saying that he's also set up to succeed in this system, and he does succeed for what it's worth. He absolutely, he does his thing virtually every week, but these two running backs are very important. I think most of you guys are well aware of Devonta Freeman's talent, so I'm going to spend most of the time here on Tevin Coleman, because I think that people look at his fantasy numbers and see that he doesn't get a whole lot of touches, that he doesn't necessarily have the biggest role, but in my personal opinion here, this guy is very, very critical to this offense. First and foremost, going back to the stamina thing that Drew brought up earlier, the fact that you can keep two very talented running backs fresh for 4 quarters is it has unquantifiable value. Those two guys are extremely talented. You don't lose much taking Freeman out of the football game. I think that it's pretty clear that Freeman's the superior of the two running backs, but being able to get Coleman in there, a complete running back in my opinion, catches the ball well out of the backfield, he can rush to the outside, gets to the edge as quick as anyone, and then he can also run it up the gut, which is something at Indiana where he did that at the college level, but there were people that basically looked at him and said, I don't know if he's going to be able, if there's one thing to take away from Tevin Coleman, they were saying that, I don't know if he can run between the tackles. And to some degree, I get the take. I'm not against that. I understand the evaluative process there, but with this guy in your offense having two complete running backs, particularly Coleman, in my opinion, just because he's so overlooked for the value that he brings, that's dangerous against any team, because anytime you can have a running back playing at 90%, in terms of what they got left in the tank by the mid-third quarter when the game starts to get intense from, a competitive standpoint. That's, again, you can't value that has so much value to any team. West Coast, Eric Coryell, Earnhardt Perkins, doesn't matter what offensive style you're running. 2 running backs that can do everything is inexpensive.
Yeah, and I think to a degree you see that with the Vikings, but because you have, obviously they play different roles, have different styles of play, but you can plug them in on third down, you can plug them in on first down, second. You can plug them in either way on any down, and I think the Falcons have that, especially because each of them can kind of play a similar style, which I think that is what kind of separates Atlanta's running back tandem, I would say, from Minnesota's. But you hit it there. That I think the run game for Atlanta sets everything up, and it allows them to kind of open things up, and then they beat you with the big play off of the run game, whether it actually be with a long run by either Freeman or Corman, or they set it up using a deep pass off of the run.
Absolutely. Okay, so that is the Atlanta Falcons offense. Let's switch over their defense real quick. We'll run through this as quickly as possible. Starting with that defensive line. This is a very talented defense.
The toughest challenge for the Vikings all season right here.
Absolutely. You got Dontari Poe, who is just he's way too athletic for how big he is. This is a guy who, on multiple occasions, has rushed the ball on the goal line.
Did he throw a touchdown pass? I'm pretty sure he threw a touchdown pass like last year or 2 years ago.
Dude, this guy, he literally can do it all, straight up, and he's so talented. He's driven. He's just such an important piece, and he's, like Linval Joseph, is going to be inherently overlooked in this defense just because he's not going to put up the big sacks. He's not going to have, the bone-crackling hits. Like, he's just a good player that does his job week in and week out. He has, the value that he brings to this defense coming over from Kansas City is it's outstanding. He's just a very important cog. And playing next to him, Grady Jarrett, we've seen him break out in a fairly big way this year. We knew he had talent. I still can't believe that he dropped as far as he did in the draft when he came out. I had him graded as, I believe, a second or third round pick at the worst. So very talented interior defensive line, but what they do, I guess what's special about them is they're very exotic. Dan Quinn came from Seattle, obviously. This guy knows defensive line play as well as anyone. And what he does basically is he's going to use a lot of stunts, a lot of exotic blitz packages, and what the goal here is to get Grady Jarrett in a one-on-one matchup to get interior pressure and to free Vic Beasley from the outside coming from that linebacker level. Those 2 guys, I guess those 5 guys, because Courtney Upshaw does a hell of a job too on that defensive line. They all sort of work together, and then you get to that second level with Deion Jones. He's gonna be kind of your Eric Kendricks here, your big time tackler, the guy that's gonna come up and make a lot of stops against the run, play basically zone coverage over the middle, never really drop more than 8 to 12 yards deep, flow sideline to sideline. That's what Deion Jones is gonna bring to the table. So basically, to break down those first 2 levels here, you got 4 guys in Brooks Reed, who kind of average. Adrian Claiborne is behind him. He had a hell of a performance a couple weeks back with, I believe, 5 sacks or 6 sacks. So he's obviously a threat, but he said it himself. He doesn't have a lot of pass rushing moves. He just tends to do the same thing every time and hopes it works. That's literally a quote. That's literally an Adrian Claiborne quote. So understanding that, just keep that in mind against Riley Reiff when he's out there, because Riley Reiff, in my opinion, is very good at working on the fly and a guy that can kind of adjust to you. That's one of the things that he's done very well this season. So to get back to my point here, that defensive line, their goal is for 3 of them, is basically to free up the 4th. That's Grady Jarrett, and basically to set up their linebackers to allow Deion Jones to just kind of set up in whatever type of coverage he's going to be.
They're trying to take up space, right? They're trying to move they're trying to move offensive linemen away from the blitzers. That's kind of how a lot of these blitz packages work, and they're very efficient at it. But one thing I wanted to add to Desmond Trufant on the outside, he might not play. He's got I believe he hasn't practiced this week, concussion protocol. From what I understand,
that's a mega loss.
He hasn't been cleared yet, is from what I understand. We'll find out official word here shortly on his status. I guess those of you listening probably will already know it at this point. But bottom line here, if he's gone, that decimates a lot of what Atlanta likes to do in the secondary, because they're probably going to have to pull Brian Poole out of the slot like they used to do in nickel. And I think that leaves a very, very good opportunity for Adam Thielen in this game. Again, that's kind of, a weekly thing now. Adam Thielen, good opportunity from the slot. Who saw that coming, right? A lot of production out of the slot. Adam Thielen.
Not this show.
Not anybody on this show for sure.
Yeah.
But then Stephon Diggs obviously makes things a lot easier for him too, because I would assume the Trufant Diggs matchup would have been kind of the highlight matchup for this offense and defense. So no Trufant would be big. It would impact this game quite a bit. And I from what I assume right now, he won't be playing, but obviously things can change here in the next few days.
So I said this earlier this week, and I just want to kind of reiterate it now. With Dez Trufant, this guy, in my opinion, has become one of the more overlooked cornerbacks in the NFL. So, what was it, 2 years ago? I believe it was an ACL. I think he tore his ACL. He basically was out for the year. And at that point in his career, for the record, he was being compared, one of the primary cornerback debates was Rhodes versus Trufant, which one of the two were better. Not necessarily because they're the same type of cornerback, but because they were at the same stages in their career, basically, and a lot of people were looking at these two guys as the next big things. Then people forgot about Trufant. I don't know what happened there, why people forgot about him, but they did. People just forgot about this guy. And I'm speaking more generally, not from, I guess, the football analyst perspective. I think most guys still know that this guy is very, very good, but just from sort of a casual fan perspective, I think a lot of people forgot how good this player is. So if he is in the game, and like Drew said, it seems like it's leaning towards him not being, that's a mega loss for this team. Again,
it would essentially be like the Vikings playing without Xavier Rhodes.
Right. It's very similar too, because you're losing. You don't have your number one cornerback going up against a very talented receiver. Whether that's Diggs or Thielen, depending on who's on the outside, I don't really care. I think they're both extremely talented players, despite kind of the love for Thielen over the last month. I think both these guys are still fairly evenly matched in terms of overall skill. So it doesn't matter to me. But no Dez Trufant is one of the biggest blows that this defense can get, because they need their secondary to allow their pass rush to get after it. That extra millisecond in coverage, that's a difference maker for guys like Grady Jarrett and Vic Beasley. So keep an eye on Jarrett, Vic Beasley. Deion Jones is going to be a name that you're probably going to hear a lot called from the broadcasters, but he's not going to be a flashy player, but he's very important. Trufant, obviously, if you see him out there, big deal for sure. And the last guy that warrants mention here, there's just not a whole lot I guess explicitly to say, is Keanu Neal out of Florida. Phenomenal safety that can do a lot of different things. Ball skills, comes up well and, to stop the run. He's a phenomenal athlete, very talented, swagger out the roof. I love Keanu Neal as a safety. I think he has a chance to be great. He's still very young, though, and he's still kind of a guy that has some lapses in coverage or some lapses in judgment, perhaps. But very talented player. If Case Keenum throws an interception, I would take the odds on it being Keanu Neal on the receiving end, simply because he's a very dangerous player, similar to guys like Harrison Smith all over the field. And he's a guy that you want to stay away from if you can. And since you can, in theory, you can stay away from safeties for the most part, that's a guy that I would expect Case Keenum to sort of try to look off in coverage and get him out of the play, because he is very dangerous if you do target him and you take the wrong gamble with Keanu Neal. So keep an eye out for him. So that wraps up the defense here. As I said at the top of the show, I wanted to tell you guys a quick story. And the reason why I'm telling you this story, this has literally nothing to do with football. This is for entertainment purposes only, and the only reason I'm doing this is because I was on Twitter this morning, and I said that I would do it, and people seem to like that idea, so here we are. I want to tell you about how I got my left butt cheek tattoo, right?
God.
So when I was in college, I had a lot of fun in college. We were on spring break my junior year down in South Padre Island. Okay, so if you're not familiar with South Padre Island, it's a big spring break resort. A lot of College kids are there every single year, no matter what. It's a phenomenal place for the college kids listening on the show, wondering where you should go on spring break. That was my personal favorite, and I went down to, Panama City, and I did Punta Cana as well. So South Padre is ranked number 1 in my personal mind. So we drove down there, which, by the way, that's a 26-hour drive.
You drove down there.
There.
So did you break on the way there to sleep somewhere, or did you just book it down there?
We went straight through. I'm not going to tell you how we did that, but we went straight through. So we took 2 vans, 10 people in each van, and we basically, we caravan down there. It was a great time. We stopped in all the weirdest states possible, but that's not the point of the story here. So once we got down to South Padre Island, if you ever been on spring break before, at the end of spring break, generally speaking, you're about ready to be done. The last day is one of the worst days of your life, generally speaking, because you're out of it. You just want to be in your bed, and you have done enough that week that you probably lost 3 or 4 years on your life. So I'm sitting in my hotel room with 3 or 4 of my good buddies, and all of us decided to take it easy. And what I mean by take it easy is we started casually taking shots. And what I have learned since then is that there's no casual way to take shots. Straight up.
You think so?
Yeah. So we got a little bit intoxicated. Let's put it that way. And the conversation came up, one of us should get a tattoo. And in my head, I was like, hey, you know what? I've thought about getting a tattoo before. Maybe this is the perfect time to do that. I don't know. And so we started coming up with ideas. And, you guys, this is subjective, but my friends are hilarious, hysterical people. I don't know what's wrong with them, but they're very, very funny. And so we came up with a lot of good ideas. And, we got to the point where it was just kind of a no-doubter. Like, we had been talking about it for so long that if I didn't do it, people would have been pissed off at me. They would have been making fun of me in the car ride home, like all that kind of stuff. I had no choice. So we walked across the street to the tattoo parlor, which, by the way, just a horrible place. I mean, do not get a tattoo on spring break. Like, no, never.
I mean, I feel like that's pretty,
I think you're supposed to know that.
That's pretty much something we should all know in the first place, but yeah.
Right. So we walked across the street to this tattoo parlor, and I was walking in, and the way I explained this to the last person I told was, when you're on spring break, and a lot of you, I'm sure, understand this, you just kind of talk to people. There's not a good reason for it, but basically when you're on the beach or, you're in the ocean or whatever it is, everyone instantly just becomes your friend. I don't know why that happens. Maybe it's a drunk thing, whatever. But so some guy comes walking up to, and I'm walking into the tattoo parlor with 3 of my good buddies, and some guy who's dressed very nice, so I thought that was kind of weird. I hated him immediately. And he came up to us and basically said, hey, what are you guys doing here? And I was like, hey, buddy, we're in front of a tattoo parlor. What do you think we're doing? And he looked at us and he was like, oh, are someone getting a tattoo? And I was like, yeah, I am. He goes, well, I'm from the Travel Channel. And I was like, okay, here we go. And
what?
And he goes, I'm from the Travel Channel, and we're doing a show, a segment. It's called Spring Breakers. It runs once a year, every year. I don't know if you've seen it before, and I don't watch the Travel Channel. I don't like MTV or any of that crap. But, whatever. I thought it was funny. My buddies were eating it up. They thought it was hilarious. And so I said, yeah, I am getting a tattoo. And he goes, well, we would like to film you doing that. And if you remember at the top of this story, I was getting a tattoo on my left butt cheek. So obviously my thought process there was, buddy, do you know what you're getting into right now? And so I asked him, I said, straight up, I'm getting a tattoo on my left butt cheek right now. Is that what you're looking for? Because, I'm down to do this. I don't care. Fine, whatever. But you understand that you're going to be filming my butthole. And the guy started laughing, and obviously, he was like, yeah, that's fine. Actually, that makes the show better. And I was like, why didn't I think of that? Of course it makes the show better. And so we walk in there, and like I said, these tattoo guys were they were tattoo guys. Like, right? A tattoo guy. You know what a tattoo designer looks like? They looked like that guy. Okay, so there's 2 of them. I come walking in there. I explain what I want, and I sit down on this chair, or whatever it is, like a fake, it basically looks like a hospital bed. Essentially, if you've never been in a tattoo parlor before, laid down there, face down, and my buddies, I had one, and they had it was like a massage chair, right? Where like your face sees through the hole.
Right.
And one of my buddies flipped underneath and was staring at me the entire time. So I'm losing my mind at this point. I'm laughing. I'm drunk. I'm having a blast. And the guy is literally like, he's 6 inches away from my butthole with this camera. Like, literally, like, he could not have been more in my bubble if he wanted to be. And it was very uncomfortable, I won't lie. And, of course, one of my buddies says to me, dude, if you farted right now, you're literally, that's going to be epic. Like you have to do it. And I tried. I couldn't muster one out, but
got scared. Stage fright.
For the entertainment purposes, I mean, how much better could that have been, right? And ultimately, what happened was I got this tattoo in my butt cheek. And remember, 26-hour car ride back. Generally, when you're in a car, you're seated. So 26 hours with a brand new tattoo on my left butt cheek. And that tattoo, not nearly as funny as the rest of the story. I ended up going with something that was somewhat meaningful to me, I suppose. I have a TC on my butt, right? So it's like an outline of Minnesota, and it's a very small outline, so it's not like extremely like accurate. It's supposed to mimic believe it's the 2006 Minnesota Twins logo. So there's a TC in the middle of the state, and it says this is Twins territory in my butt. So it's like my license plate, basically. So that is the story of how I got tattooed on my left butt cheek.
That's some phenomenal content on our podcast for, what was that, like a 5-6 something minute story? Was that 5 or 6 minutes? It took a chunk of time, I think, but it was probably I laughed several times. So
I will I'll post a picture of it on our Twitter account if you guys are interested in seeing that. If you're interested in seeing my butt, I should say. We'll put that up on the Twitter machine. So I hope you guys enjoyed that story as much as I did.
Good for the brand. It's good for I'm sure. Yeah.
Good for the brand. Big time sports guy, right? So yes, that is. Geez, we don't have that much time left here.
No, we don't.
We're gonna have to roll through these questions really fast. I would have liked to have gone through these slowly because they are so good. But let's jump into the Twitter takes and try to wrap this.
We had to get your butt tattoo story in. I mean, that was top priority over these questions.
So let's try to rip through these as quickly as possible. Go for it.
All right, let me bring them up quick here. All right, our first question from Seth to Paul, I think that is, at Seth Toops. Compare the remainder of the Vikings season to a movie without going for the obvious Titanic correlation. So what do you think?
This is so easy. Rudy. I'm just going to end it right. I don't even feel the need to explain that.
That was one of my choices. But I'm gonna kind of go in a slightly different. For one thing, for people that don't know, I'm very much not a movie guy. I don't watch movies. I have seen Rudy for what it's worth, but I do not watch movies. I watched The Office 8 times on Netflix over and over and over. But the Vikings fan base, I'm going to compare to Remember the Titans because there's conflict on the roster, and over time the team unites to come together, pull off what is supposed to be, I think, in the movie it says they portray it as an upset. This team winning all those games, but in reality they won every game by like 35. But point being, fan base is divided by the quarterback thing right now, and I think we're starting to see slowly how it's kind of coming together. At least I'm kind of seeing that, and so that's kind of my movie reference here. But I don't know if that's a good one because you kind of took the best one, I think. But yeah.
On to the next one.
All right, Eli at Skull Seas. Other than the QBs and Adam Thielen, which offensive skill player is most important to the success of the team? Also, who do you think has been the best special teamer and who has stepped up? Who is the best special teamer who has stepped up this year?
Okay, so the first question, Eli, this is the easiest question you have ever asked. Stephon Diggs. Yep. No contest. I don't even feel the need to really explain myself here. Second one, much more difficult question. To be quite honest with you, I saw this question ahead of time. Generally speaking, I don't read I don't go on our Twitter and read them because Drew is our social media guy, and I don't want to know the questions ahead of time, but this one I just happened to see. And I actually did some research here because I think this is a difficult question to answer on the fly.
I have my answer without research, and I'm curious to see if.
Who are you gonna say?
I'm gonna say Eric Wilson.
Okay,
that was mine.
That was my number 2 choice, and that's a
Okay.
that's a very good pick. But the one that I went with is Kentrell Brothers, and the
Okay.
only difference between those two players, in my opinion, is that Brothers is simply better at getting to the football. He takes better angles to the ball. I
Sure.
guess he's probably more experienced in the role, obviously, and he's just kind of a superior version of Wilson. I believe, by my count, that he has 7 special teams tackles this year. I'm not sure. One is 7 or 8, which basically one special teams tackle per game. If you think about the fact that he's coming down on kick coverage, coming down on punt return, or excuse me, on kick return and punt return. It's coming down on both of those. Probably gets 4 to 8 chances a game, something like that. So to average 1 tackle per game,
That's not bad.
It's very impressive. On to the next one.
All right, from Josh at _handy13_. I think one of the biggest battles will be the Vikings D against Freeman and Coleman. Not been as good as last year, but still a great running back combo. Definitely Vikings defense biggest test of the season. Do you agree with that? The Vikings run defense, is it their biggest test of the season?
So the first point that he made here about Coleman and Freeman, we talked about that earlier. Completely agree with that one. That's a very tough test in more ways than one, because they'll also be catching the ball in the backfield, which gets the linebackers' feet a little bit messed up. It's different. It's a different style of stopping, basically a glorified run play to a degree. So yes, I completely agree with you there. On the second point here, definitely the Vikings run D's biggest test, I believe you said. No, that's wrong, because Le'Veon Bell already played. So I tend to
a degree. I think I kind of half agree with this, because when you have 2 guys that can do the things that Atlanta's guys do with Freeman and Coleman, they can both do so many things. I don't want to say it's better than what Le'Veon Bell offers, but I see the point here. I also want to add that if Adrian Peterson was not a Saint week 1, the Kamara and Ingram combination could have been devastating. So the Vikings are lucky. Thank you, Adrian Peterson, for being a Saint.
Maybe, maybe Adrian Peterson, maybe, conspiracy theory, maybe he went down to New Orleans just to help the Vikings out.
Hey, that'd be a very deep conspirity.
That would be very un-Adrian Peterson of him, but who knows?
Hey, Adrian Peterson doing things for other people. Wow, that'd be quite the development, and I would be interested in an investigation on that.
With, I guess, to kind of counter your point here, the only reason for me that Le'Veon Bell is a more difficult task is, well, I guess there's 2 reasons, but number 1 is the point that I made earlier about how keeping your running backs fresh is very important, and that's kind of what the best feature of having 2 running backs is. Le'Veon Bell doesn't run out of energy.
No, he doesn't.
He's like Adrian Peterson, so it doesn't really matter. And since the Falcons don't run a ton of 2 running backs,
as long as he's staying off the weed, he's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So, and honestly, he's probably better when he's smoking pot. Just honestly,
Josh Gordon might agree with that.
I think he might. And so for me, those 2 running backs, that's great. But the way that Steve Sarkisian uses them, it's basically it's the same type of thing as Le'Veon Bell. It's just that you have 2 instead of 1. So Le'Veon Bell is definitively the best running back in the NFL, in my opinion. So that's why for me that was the toughest test. But I do agree with you in the sense that this is a very dynamic backfield that's going to create a lot of problems. So It's definitely right up there.
All right. Don from Ohio asked us 3 questions here. So do you want me to go all of them at once, or should we just kind of
let's do
one at a time?
Let's do them in order here, because the one that I sent you before, he asked like 5 days ago, and I've literally been planning on doing it for since the beginning of the week. So we need to get to that one for sure.
So we'll go. Number 1 here. What schoolyard game from childhood would you like to see the Vikings use for the next end zone celebration? Because for what it's, the Vikings have been very good at this season. So what do you? I have one in mind. I'll just answer right now. It's not really a childhood game, but I would love to see the touchdown scorer take the football and another player form a hoop behind a defensive player that you had just scored on, and then have the scorer dunk the ball over the defender into the imaginary hoop.
That's gonna get you 15 for taunting.
I don't care. That'd be awesome. That's what I want to see. And Stephon Diggs would do that, I think, if he torched, like, I guess if Desmond Trufant was active, hypothetically, and torched him for touchdown, I would love to see that. But it's not realistic, but that's what I would want to see.
So, to my recollection, there aren't all that many schoolyard games left. I didn't
anymore.
I didn't play that many schoolyard games. I just kind of hung out with my friends and did weird stuff. So this is not something I'm super familiar with. But based off what I remember and based off what's still out there, I think that Red Rover is the definitively correct answer here. Because I'm just imagining, let's say Stephon Diggs scores. I think that he's probably the best guy to be Red Rover. Red Rover said Stephon Diggs right over. I just think that he would do it really well because he's kind of a diva. He's kind of a good actor. So
likes the spotlight.
I think that you have 11 guys in the field, so that means you got 5 and 5. You can easily do that, and then you send someone over, and obviously not having volume and not being able to hear them call that out is that's kind of part of the fun. But
that's why it's way easier to just have you only need 2 involved for the dunk, and it's just
right. Right.
It's demoralizing for the other team. 15 yards is just 15 yards. That doesn't matter, right?
Right. So I'm going Red Rover definitively here. I don't think there's a better answer.
All right. Number 2. Do you see Sam Bradford returning for the playoffs as an emergency backup?
Nope. I don't think he's coming back. Period.
Right.
I expressed this a couple shows ago.
Because technically he's eligible to, I believe.
Don't care. I think there is a very real case right now to believe that his career might be over. Because they still haven't diagnosed what's wrong with him. Okay. When they figure out what's wrong with him and they announce that to us, then maybe I can be a little bit more optimistic. But right now they don't know what's up with him and they don't know how to fix it. So I think his career might be over.
All right. I believe Mike Wobschall, the Vikings digital content manager guy, I think he said that, or he hinted in a reply to someone that Bradford is unlikely to return at all this year. So I'm going to go with that. But now, last question here from Don. The 2000 Vikings were 10-2 after Thanksgiving, lost 3 of the last 4. 2009 Vikings were 10-1, lost 3 of the last 5. Both missed number 1 seeds when they had a very good chance to. Will this Vikings team have the same fate and kind of not wilt as the season goes on, but kind of maybe lose a game or 2 that they probably should win and cost a valuable seed, or will they be different, win those important games, and maybe earn a 1 seed?
Okay, so first and foremost, credit to Don here for doing a little bit of research, coming up with something that I probably would not have thought of. And honestly, I didn't want to do matchup history on this show just because I didn't want to ruin any of your guys' day. So, the simple answer here is no. I think this team is for real. And I guess my number one reason for thinking that, and the reason why I think they can maintain consistency, is because they blew it 1 year ago, and I truly, truly believe that Mike Zimmer learned a ton from that as a head coach, because he just has a different demeanor this year. He's better with the press. He just seems more confident in general. It seems like he's very, satisfied with the chemistry on this team. And I think all these guys, they're not only playing for themselves because so many of them are undrafted free agents looking for that big second contract that'll change their life. But there's so much like brotherhood on this team, and that's kind of a soft thing to say or kind of a cliche thing to say. But you got 2 best friends in Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks. They're not gonna those 2 guys aren't gonna allow the other one to half-ass it straight up. That's just not gonna happen. You got Xavier Rhodes, who do you think that he wants to be known as the number 1 cornerback in the NFL? Because I certainly do. So I don't see him taking any plays off the rest of this year. Harrison Smith doesn't know what relaxing is. That guy has absolutely zero chill. So I think this defense, you look at Anderson Deo having his best season. Linval Joseph just. By the way,
you could literally talk about every single player.
Right.
And, in theory, you could.
The discipline on this defense is incredible. I just want to say this real quick. When I was working at the bar last night, and I heard someone say that Linval Joseph isn't athletic; he's fat. And I started laughing. I literally wanted to stop. I was so close to stopping.
That's certainly a take.
I was so close to stopping and being like, "Sir, absolutely not." But anyways,
wow.
Discipline is the difference for me this year. That's why I don't see this team falling off a cliff.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I think the Vikings to this point have proven it against really good teams and have proven it on the road as well. Their last 3 weeks, especially, they beat this Rams team and did so easily. And then they went on the road against two, I think, pretty tough teams to beat at their own stadiums. And, they won the game, both of them with relative ease. I mean, it got a little bit interesting at the end of both of those, but I mean, the Vikings had it for most of the game, for all the game, essentially. Point being, I think this team has handled better competition better than those past teams did, if that makes sense. And now, granted, the 2000 Vikings I'm not very familiar with because I was 5 years old. But in 2009, I think you saw after the Vikings lost that first game.
That was 100% on Childress. 100% on Childress.
Yeah. Yeah. So plus the whole Childress-Favre dynamic that year was just
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That was bound to kind of blow up at some point. So
that's probably the easiest answer to this question. Like if we wanted to take the easy route here,
Mike Zimmer versus Brad Childress is not
it's
a close contest.
Not a contest.
Mike Zimmer wins the Super Bowl with that roster in 2009, I think.
Definitively. Honestly, I had this take earlier. I think I was talking with our girl Gabs on Twitter, and I had the take earlier this year basically that if you have any other coach in there instead of Childress, basically, a guy that
Leslie Frazier.
If anyone, I don't care. If it was if it was Leslie Frazier in there, honestly, I think the Vikings would have won because he was the most boring dude in the world. Don't get me wrong, but
he hated the attention. Brad Childress loved the attention
so much.
There's the difference.
Oh my god, dude! Imagine how much he would eat up being Twitter
that
popular.
Funny little ear piece he had to wear for some reason. It's like it's like what we had except without the headset. It was like just this part, like just the wired microphone part. Which this is not good audio, but yeah.
Dude, I'm just imagining Brad Childress on Twitter right now. He would absolutely be the guy that quotes.
By the way, he's like 50 pounds heavier than he was when he was coaching now.
Yeah,
he's like huge now.
His life,
like bigger than Andy Reid.
His life fell apart.
He's like what is he now? Like assistant, scouting associate.
He literally everyone looked at that season. Every general manager looked at that season and looked at that Vikings team, looked at what they had accomplished, and literally all they could do is be like, this clown had every opportunity to win the ultimate prize for the first time, go down in history as the greatest coach in franchise history. Whether that's right or not, that's how he would have been remembered. And he pissed it away because he's an idiot. Literally, he just could not get enough of himself. And that's why the Vikings lost to the New Orleans Saints.
It's frustrating.
Honestly, it's very frustrating. It was Tracy Porter's fault. Don't get me wrong. That guy's the worst. I hate him. I will never stop hating him. But Brad Childress, get out. So Mike Zimmer will not allow any of that crap to ever happen again. Ever. It's not gonna happen. What happened last year was like the wake up call for Mike Zimmer, where it was like, yo, dude, you're doing a good job, but you need to stick it to it. Like something like you still need to get better as a head coach. And I really think he went into last offseason and was like, you know what?
I mean, it also helps that it doesn't help, but it hurt that he was having like 100 eye surgeries a week, and he essentially has a glass eye now. So.
Not being able to see is kind of important.
Yeah.
A little bit of a factor.
Watching things happen, I like that. I think there's that meme of I think I saw last year when the Vikings were collapsing, the meme someone made of 2 eye patches on Zimmer's face.
Yeah.
So we can't see it.
Yeah.
So this is Mike Zimmer coaching on the sidelines because his team's so bad. Yeah. I enjoy it. I enjoy that.
That definitely would be in the Mount Rushmore of Vikings memes, I think, which is probably a segment we should do at some point because that just sounds hilarious. Yeah. I know it would be copying part of my takes.
That Teddy time gif that everybody uses literally every time Teddy's mentioned in the news. They're like, yeah. That.
Oh,
audio. That dancing you just did was good audio for our podcast.
Anyways, folks, that is the show. We went a little bit long here, and we still have to do the extended sign out too. So,
by the way, we're gonna do our weekly picks. We're gonna just fill out the spreadsheet, and then tweet that out on our Twitter account at Vikings ATL Pod. We'll just fill it out and then we'll tweet it because obviously we're out of time. We had a lot of stuff to cover today. So.
Absolutely. So this is the extended sign out today. You're welcome to stop listening now. Don't care. But so here we go. So we have a donation tab on our website right now, and I want to explain this to you because Drew said this as well. I'm extremely uncomfortable having a donation page on our website, simply because you guys don't owe us anything, in my opinion. But here's the reason why we have it now, and it's because I went through and looked at a lot of different podcasts, a lot of very popular podcasts, and they all have a donation page. And the reason why they have that isn't because they're requesting money from people or that they feel that people owe them something for doing the show. They just have it because it's an opportunity for people to, if they really appreciate the show, or it's changed your life or whatever it is, and you want to just throw a $5 our way. I'm not going to say no to that. Straight up, we would appreciate that, and that's a great gift. And you guys are the best listening audience in the world. Again, one more time, I'm not asking for donations at all. I'm just letting you know that the donation thing is there. We're going to mention this once a month, and that's it. Period. I just want to know that the donation tab is now on that website, www.vikingsatlpod.com. It's right at the top tab. I'll link it in the article if you can't find it, but that's there. Appreciate in advance any of you guys that donate, and if you don't, again, it doesn't matter to us at all. It's just there because if you want to do it, awesome. We appreciate it. I should tell you, though, how we're going to break down the donations real quick. 50% of that is going to go to T-shirt giveaways, advancements in technology, and basically production costs. So if you haven't done a podcast before, in order to stream yourself on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all that stuff, you need to have a host website, and that costs money. So that's kind of what you're looking at for 50% of any donations. The other 25%, that's half and half split between Drew and myself. Basically, you're looking at Little Caesars for Drew and Chipotle for me. That's kind of what this is,
yeah.
And we really appreciate it if that is a choice that you want to make. So. Yeah. Moving on from there, I think I had one more. Yeah, we have some new stuff coming for you guys. We're bringing in what I'm calling a sports grunt, because I think that's hilarious. Straight up, I think I'm funny for saying that. So that's gonna be happening here. We threw out something on Twitter earlier today. I'm giving everyone some time to, I said that speed was a requirement for it, but that was just literally, I wanted to see the dedication of some people, just to be honest with you. So I'm giving people time to apply. If you want to apply for that position, it's a very, very small paid position. I think the opportunity here, what makes this cool for people possibly, is that you get an opportunity to work on a podcast that is fairly successful. We know how to make this thing work. We've done a lot to, prepare ourselves for what's coming next for us, and we believe we have a good product, and we believe we have a lot of good information to share with you if the chance that you want to be a podcaster at some point in your life. And on top of that, we have a ton of access to a lot of information, so we'll be throwing that your way. Stuff like Pro Football Focus, NFL Game Pass, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the benefit of having that opportunity with us. And obviously, you get to hang out with Drew and I. And like I just said a couple seconds ago, I think we're pretty funny. I think we're pretty cool guys to hang out with, and being our grunt, I promise you it'll be
grunt.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and we have some big plans for that grunt, and we're excited about it. So look forward to that, and that's about it. So 75-minute show today, not bad.
Goodness gracious.
So for those of you out there that can't handle extended podcasts, I apologize. We had a lot of information to cover today, but. Hopefully, the story time and the excessive breakdowns and that kind of stuff. Hopefully, that warranted sticking around for this entire 75-minute duration. And we appreciate you guys being here as always. So if you can find us at www.vikingsterritory.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Podbean, YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Amazon T-shirts. You guys know the shtick at this point, right? So once again, thanks for listening, guys. We'll be here on Sunday at 11 a.m. for the ATL pregame show, breaking down some film. I imagine we'll be looking a lot at Julio Jones and that kind of stuff. So we hope to see you guys there for that live show on Sunday morning, right ahead of the Vikings game. And that's about it. So thanks for joining us, folks, and we'll catch you on Sunday.